They eliminated Oreshnik before it became mainstream. The President and the Security Service of Ukraine. For the first time, they spoke about the elimination of Oreshnik in Kapustin Yar, Russia. And this happened in the summer of 2023. According to Zelensky, the Russians had the opportunity to make 3 shots in total, one of which they used. According to intelligence, the Russians are not capable of producing up to 6 such missiles per year, and in the near future they plan to deploy Oreshnik in Belarus. Its flight range is up to 5,000 kilometers. What other high-profile statements were made during the meeting at the President's office, where there was an unusual interaction with journalists? Natalia Ostrovska will tell us more.
Around a round table with coffee, stacks of documents, maps and journalists who could shout out questions. An informal briefing took place at the President's office. The President gathered the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, the head of Foreign Intelligence, the Commissioner for Sanctions Policy and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'll tell you now what information was revealed here for the first time. We enter the office where a meeting was held just a few minutes ago. The cameraman immediately turns on the camera and manages to capture Volodymyr Zelensky signing documents. And what are we signing right now?
We're signing the 20s.
Twice, one for propaganda cases, one for incidents.
On November 20th, new American sanctions against Russia will come into effect. The list includes the largest oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft. Zelensky hopes that as a result, within a year, the Russians will lose $50 billion. And in 2026, the budget deficit of the aggressor country could grow to $100 billion.
Canada, Australia, Britain, Japan, the EU. These are our key partners who have reduced imports to a minimum or even to zero. Imports from the Russian Federation. And those who actually increased it, India, China, Turkey, and Central Asia, the former Soviet colleagues, so to speak. Yes, this is something we need to work on, and there is a vision for how to address it.
But Zelensky reminds us that China remains Russia's biggest helper in the war. Whether Trump managed to influence Xi during their personal meeting on October 30th, the Ukrainian president says, is still unknown. In response to my clarification about how Ukraine is reacting to China's ban on exporting important drone components, the president answers as follows.
China has massively restricted exports to European Union countries. Because I know that when all of us were searching, and you know that brigades were separately funded because we were looking everywhere. We separately funded each brigade so that they could all gather through their own channels. Wherever it was possible to get even half a drone until we started mass producing our own.
Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha adds that some European countries are lifting sanctions against Putin's inner circle, which is funding the war. Meanwhile, the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service, Ole Vashchenko, announces the preparation of a new package of sanctions.
I have to admit it. And some European countries are even trying to remove certain Russian oligarchs from the sanctions packages. That's why we will continue to defend and insist on the position of sanctioning Russian big business and oligarchs who are involved in the functioning of the Russian war machine.
As of today, our tasks have been defined jointly with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Security Service is working on the 20th package, and there are already plans for the 21st sanctions package.
According to experts, Russian oil product exports have now dropped to their lowest level since the start of the full-scale invasion. And the reason is not only Western sanctions.
I like the possibility of linking kinetic sanctions with traditional sanctions. I mean that specifically by striking critical infrastructure facilities, the Federation then has to repair certain facilities.
The head of the Security Service, Vasyl Malyuk, talks about the impact of such long-range attacks.
Since the beginning of the year, there have been almost 160 successful strikes on oil extraction and oil refining facilities. If we look at September and October of this year, that's 20 facilities. Among them are 6 refineries, 2 oil terminals, 3 oil depots, and 9 oil pumping stations.
But not just sanctions. The president of the SBU speaks publicly, perhaps for the first time, about the destruction of one of the 3 Russian missiles. Nutcracker? It turns out that this happened back in the summer of 2023 in the territory of Kapustin Yar. Russia has already used another Oreshnik, so there is one more left. The missile's range is 5,500 kilometers. Due to its high speed and trajectory, the missile is difficult to intercept even with modern air defense systems. Vasyl Malyuk tells TSN about the details of the operation.
The destruction was 100%. It was a very successful operation, but at that time it was not publicized in any way. This was reported exclusively to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, the President of Ukraine. A few others also knew about it. Several presidents of other countries. We carried out everything quite successfully. There was 100% confirmation. This was at a time when the name Oreshnik was, in principle, still unknown to the general public, not in use, and the Russians had not yet started to threaten with it in particular.
Meanwhile, there is something that now worries both the military and civilians. Most of all, the shifting line of combat engagements. We're talking about Pokrovsk. The president says that the battle for this city is ongoing. The Russians who enter the city destroy it, but there is no encirclement. And what about Putin's plans to come to Pokrovsk? Zelensky responds with sarcasm.
Putin says that he will go to Pokrovsk. Yes, by all means, if he comes to Pokrovsk. Everyone will be applauding. We understand how it will all end. And
that was the last question. The president's spokesperson. He called this format of off-camera communication with journalists experimental. But it is very similar to the one practiced at the White House, where local journalists have already gotten used to shouting questions at the president. Natalia Ostrovska, Lucy Osovchuk, Marathon United News, TSN 1+1.
There will be only one peace plan. Right now, Ukraine and its allies are developing it together. There are no alternative plans from individual countries or competing initiatives. This was stated by the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, in an interview with Herbik Ukraine. Yermak refuted media reports claiming that there are supposedly different peace plans. Supposedly the US has one plan and the EU has another. According to him, working discussions on its formation are currently ongoing. But all partners are in constant dialogue, which will result in a single document jointly developed by Ukraine and its partners that will take Ukrainian interests into account. Presidents Zelensky and Trump, as well as European leaders, all agree that any negotiations must begin with a ceasefire and along the current line of contact. This is the key to successful diplomatic work, Yermak emphasized. The number of victims in the Kherson region has increased. There are already 19 of them. This morning, the Russians launched a massive artillery attack on the regional center, targeting residential areas and the market in the Dnipro district. A man and a woman were killed. 14 city residents sustained injuries and wounds. Another civilian was hospitalized due to a drone attack. Later, the enemy army shelled Bilozerka and Darivka. 4 local residents were injured there. And in Donetsk region, the occupiers killed 8 people and wounded 18 more. A series of strikes was carried out on Sloviansk. There, 3 people were killed and 3 others were injured. In the city, 10 apartment buildings, a boiler house, a cafe, a school, and a post office were damaged. Kostiantynivka also came under enemy fire. 2 city residents were killed and 6 were wounded. At night, the Russians launched a massive attack on Odessa region with strike drones. About 12 Shaheds targeted the energy sector. The enemy directed them at civilian infrastructure facilities. A fire broke out after a strike hit an industrial facility. Dnipro region also came under attack. The occupiers struck a business in Pavlograd with a drone. There is 1 person wounded there. In Sinelnikivsky district, a woman was killed. In Nikopol district, a man was injured as a result of shelling.